review. Hello, wonderful people of the internet. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. So let's get into it. Now, this book has taken me roughly 2 months to finish, and that is a long time, so thank you all for bearing with me and waiting for me to finish this. I've finally done it this morning. I'm really happy to be able to be talking about this with you. So, in case you didn't know, The Book Thief is a historical fiction book about a girl, an orphan girl in Nazi Germany called Liesl Meminger, and she has just moved in with foster parents, and it is the story of her life therein. And this was a risk for me because I've not read many historical fiction books, and those that I haven't particularly enjoyed. I found them too based in the real world for my tastes, not enough fantasy or alterations there for me to suit my preferences. But what sold this book to me was the fact that it is narrated by the Grim Reaper, and that is something that you do not hear every day for a book. And so that's what made me pick this up, because it made me think of the Discworld series. So that's these here. This is a comedy series about death as the main character, and I really love those books. So, well, the one of them I've read. I've only read one of these, but I've got the rest of the series to read, and I loved the one book that I read. And so this made me want to pick this up. I thought, wow, like that, I want to try this now. And I was not disappointed, so let's get into what I liked. So, Death as narrator was really good, and I feel like Zusak did a lot of interesting things with it. So, to counter sort of the grim fact that, this is about death, it's quite a grim story, death runs through it all along, there's tragedy, suffering and pain, and yet you've got the Grim Reaper either being quite depressing or laugh out loud hilarious. He's very sarcastic in the book, and I really enjoyed that. You wouldn't think that the comic relief for a book would be death, and yet it was. And another thing that Markus Zusak used death for was to spoil the book. Now let me elaborate on that. The first 15 pages of this book are death, spoiling the entirety of the book for you. He says, I met the book thief here, here, and here. There are 3 places. And it's like, here, she's with a woman and someone dead. Here, she's near an aeroplane with someone dead in. And here, she's in the middle of a bomb wreckage site, all alone, crying. So, you already have a real sense of where this story is going to go. You know that the story is going to end with her crying in the middle of a bombed street. And so, I feel like this novel had a sense of dramatic irony through the whole thing, because Death would do this frequently. He'd just go, oh yeah, that guy, he dies soon. And you'd just be expecting it and waiting for it to happen. And then it would. It's just so unique, and most of the time a good thing. I'll get into when it wasn't a good thing in the dislike section. But most of the time I really liked Death as a narrator and felt like he sort of made the book for me. I'm not sure whether I would have enjoyed it as much as I did, even though I did love the story, if it wasn't for Death. Okay, point number 2 is that this story was really heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. It is just this little girl's day-to-day life. She's making friends, she's learning to getting to know her foster parents, learning to read and write. You get all of that in here. It's not really got a plot, it is just her day-to-day life, and I love that, actually. I was really surprised because I thought I'd find that boring, and I did sometimes, very rarely, but for most of this book, I was just enjoying reading what this little girl was getting up to as she grew up. And, to sort of stop it from getting boring, about in the middle of the book, it says this on the back, so you're not being spoiled. They just drop a Jewish person into her basement, so now you've got a new source of tension. You've got the first third of the book is setting up the characters in the setting, then you've got the part with the Jewish person, and then you've got the end. And if the part with the Jewish person hadn't been there, my opinion might have been very different. I might have found this book a lot more boring, but because of that, and the tensions that arose from it, I found that this book never got boring. So that's another good thing. The third good thing is linked to this Jewish person. Now, he gets to know the main character pretty well in this book. I think I could say that without it being a spoiler. And he writes some books for her because she loves books. It's called The Book Thief because she steals books every now and then. And he writes these books for her. And if I could find an example in the book somewhere, please be patient with me. It's like right in the middle. Hey, there we are. You get these. Just these little illustrations with the writing on them. Exactly like how that Lysol would have seen them when the Jew, who's called Max Vanderberg, gave them to her. And I found those to be really interesting because they were quite metaphorical most of the time and gave you a perspective of the suffering of Jewish people in Nazi Germany, because obviously they were, I can't really put into words, they were just treated so badly. It was so unfair. And to get a window into how this Jewish person is reacting to that and how his emotions, what this makes him feel, and imagine the urges that it gives him is all portrayed in these little drawing segments, because the character of the Jew is keeps very much to himself. So this is how you get revealed what he's thinking. And I love that, not only because they were unique, but because of the window into the character that they gave. Okay, so final point, without going into spoilers, would be the characters themselves. Now, I've spoken about Max Vanderberg, so we won't go into him anymore. But these characters felt like real people. Lysol, her best friend Rudy or Ruddy, however you say it, her mum Rosa, well, her foster mum, her foster father Hans, they all felt unique and real. And that's really good. I seem to be on a real reading high because I haven't read a book that I haven't liked for a very long time. So that's good. And all of them have had really good characters. So I must sound like a broken record in my reviews saying, oh, good characters. And this is not a break to the exception. This is not an exception to the trend. The characters were amazing. And if they hadn't been as well written as they had, a bit like with the inclusion of the Jewish person, without that, I feel like I would have given up on this book quite far in, because I would have no reason to care about reading this little girl's day-to-day life if I didn't care about her and the people around her. But I did, and that meant that, I carried on reading. So, going into what I didn't like, contrary to how I structured my last review video of Mice and Men, I'm not going to do what I liked, spoilers, what I didn't like. I'm going to do 2 spoiler-free sections now, so that you can click off the video at the end if you want to, and then you can stay on if you want to watch the spoiler section. So what I didn't like. So, yeah. With Death's narration, like I said, I go into, it was, there are 2 sides of the coin. One, it was funny, it was unique, it was interesting, I loved that. On the other one, when Death spoiled certain parts of the book, I feel like it might have lessened the impact a bit. Specifically, the ending. I've read a few reviews. A lot of people are saying, oh, I was crying, it was really sad. And while I was sad, I was like, oh, well, that's a shame. I wasn't sobbing because I've been expecting it all along. And it might have lessened the blow. I'm not sure what the author intended by telling you. There's probably some hidden metaphorical intention thing that I've completely missed. But I feel like it did lessen the impact of the ending and other people dying, because I knew it was going to happen. And I would have been a lot sadder if I hadn't been expecting it. So there was probably a reason for why the author did that, but I feel like Death's narration spoiling some really big parts of the book. Like, small bits I'm okay with, but big bits did lessen the emotional impact, and that could be a problem from time to time. Now, that's the only criticism I can think of off the top of my head, because I did really, really enjoy this book, and I don't know, really trying to be nitpicky here. The first bit of the book, before the Jewish person arrived, got a bit boring in the middle, I suppose, and not outrageously. I didn't know that it was going to be a day-to-day life story, When I started this book, I was expecting a proper plot, so I was waiting for quite a while for it to take off, but it didn't. And once I realised why, I enjoyed it more. So just warning you now, it's not a plot, it is day-to-day life. So if you go in expecting that, maybe you won't be as bored in the first bit as I was, because I was waiting for the plot to begin, and it never did. It was just her day-to-day life. And I appreciated that a lot towards the end of the book when I realised the intention. But before then, I wasn't really enjoying it. So yeah, I think that is all the criticism I can give for this book. I'll give my star rating now so that you can click off the video if you don't want to be spoiled and know my overall feelings for it. So on Goodreads, I gave this book 5 stars. Now, if you could give half stars on Goodreads, I'd probably give it 4.5, just for the minor criticisms of the lessening emotional impact and the boredom at the beginning. But I feel like this is really worthy of all the awards it's won. I let me see whether it's got any lists. No, it hasn't got lists of the awards it's got on the book like they usually do. But this book was amazing. Really eye-opening, actually. I know I'm going to sound really dense here, but when I had thought of Nazi Germany before reading this book, I just thought of a bunch of mind-washed zombies who would, no one could trust each other, you had to keep secrets, blah, blah, blah. It was just, they were all Nazis, but not everyone in Germany was Nazis. And I know that sounds obvious to someone who's a bit cleverer than me, but I just didn't think that before reading this book. And so this really opened my eyes, because, the family in this book, most of the characters in this book actually, don't hate Jewish people and don't support the Nazi Party. And so the Nazi Party isn't a villain in this book, and it's an antagonistic force. And that's not what I was expecting. When I read this book, I was expecting the people Lysol was stealing from to be the bad guys. But they're not even that big a part of this book, and certainly not the villains. The villains are the Nazis and the British. But anyway. Really eye-opening, really unique, really good, 4.5 stars. Read The Book Thief. I highly recommend it. Okay, so getting into spoilers, just a bit more detail about that influenced my enjoyment of the book. So, we'll go straight into the ending. The ending. Everyone dies in the ending. Except from the main character. Her foster parents, her best friend, not Max, but most of the characters you care about die at the end in a bombing. And that would have been devastating if I hadn't known it was going to happen. But as I've said, I knew it was coming, so the emotional impact was lessened. But that as an ending was really good, I suppose. I think it was really good. I only read this morning, and even though I was expecting it, I haven't wholly formed my thoughts of it yet. But, okay, so the ending was good, even though I haven't wholly formed my thoughts. I liked the ending. I thought, I really like endings where other people die for some reason. It's not what you usually expect. Although I did expect it in this book. But it was a great ending for this story, I feel. Okay, another thing was sort of Lysol's realisation towards the end of the book about words. Words were the villain. Like, basically, what she was saying was that Hitler would have been nothing without words, without the ability to persuade people that the Jewish people were the enemies. Without the ability to be charismatic and give those speeches, he would have had no way of becoming what he did. And so Lysol, I can't calling her Lysol realised that words were the enemy, and yet words were one of the only things that sustained her through a time of real sadness for her. When her when her real mothers left her, her younger brothers died. She learning to read and reading, the act of reading itself, helped her get through that. It was a coping mechanism. So she realises that words are a weapon, and medicine at the same time, you know? They can be used to harm, they can be used to heal. And that was a really interesting realization and viewpoint that I hadn't considered before, but I would definitely think about that a lot more now that I've read it. Another thing was the last line. The last line gave you a lot to think about. Now, I think this is one of this last line and other bits of the book are the reason that Death narrated the story, why Markus Zusak chose that. The last line is Death saying, "Humans haunt me." So, Death is not the enemy in this book. Death isn't the one who chooses humans to be taken away. Once humans die, he takes their souls out of Earth. You know, he doesn't really talk about an afterlife, but he takes their souls away. And so, humans haunt him because he sees things that make him really sad, you know? Yeah, you get viewpoints from him sometimes, breaking away from lifestyle. He talks about the things that he sees as he's picking up humans, people who have died in the war, and how confused he is. He's like, why are they doing this to each other? And how it sort of traumatizes him. You know, he's developed coping mechanisms in this story to help him deal with all the devastation that he sees. He likes to look at the sky and the colours. That's what distracts him from it. He has to look at the sky and the colours to help what he's doing not get to him. And also stories. He's telling the book thief story. He carries a few stories with him. That's his other way of doing it, learning the stories of people after he's taken their souls away, once they've died. And so that was really interesting, how Death is a human character in this. You know, he is just as, you know, he is not, what's the word? He's susceptible to what he's seeing. And that was really interesting, because you just think the Grim Reaper's just taking them, not thinking about it. No, this is really upsetting him, what he's seeing. And so that was great. And the last line of the book really drove this point home. Humans haunt Death. They confuse him, and they upset him, and they're so beautiful and so tragic and so contradictory. They haunt this godlike presence. We get to him. And that was one of the major messages of the book. And I'm really bad at untangling messages and themes from stories. I'm not an expert in that, so I can't talk about what the message was exactly, or what the theme was exactly. But, you know, it could be human nature. That could be the right way of putting it. But, you know, even Death is really affected by the behaviour of people, and that was a really interesting thing to think about. So overall, yeah, now I've spoken about the spoilers, this book is essentially just a big package of things to think about. You know, I will talk about this to people who are willing to listen for a long time from now, discuss with them the different perspectives and ideas that this gave me. It's great. It is a book that puts forward so many ideas, and I love it for that. Okay, so that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. I won't be posting on Wednesday, but I will for Halloween on Sunday, and have a good one, y'all. Bye.